The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. This is episode 122 on June 19th. Don, happy Father's Day, buddy.
Happy Father's Day, Terry. You have a good day?
I did. Very busy. But that's my life this time of year. It's just for those of, I'll get this out of the way now. For those of you who have emailed me, called me, texted me, and I have not responded, I apologize. I'm not exaggerating. I really don't have a spare minute of time this time of year. So I hope you have patience with me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Well, I'll tell you what, if there's anybody I've met that's more busy or busier, however you want to say it, busier than I am, it's you. And Dwayne and I talk about it all the time, and we don't see how you even stop to eat as much as you got going on. Yeah, I don't think you have time to eat or sleep.
Yeah, from June 1st till the end of July, that's you have consulting season where you're running like crazy, going all over the place, and a lot of wind chill time. From the beginning of June to the end of July is my crazy time. But like what Father's Day is about, I'm only going to have these kids at home a short period of time. So had a good weekend and got a lot done today. We're going to talk a little bit about following up to see if you had any luck on buying a farm. But I think did you have to do any spraying or anything this week, or did you
The only thing I did on my plots this week was, we're in the midst of a drought. I mean, terrible drought. And I'd planted those pumpkins, after we got the pumpkin question a couple weeks ago, went out and planted pumpkins, and they had not seen one of them little hills of pumpkins, and checked them this afternoon, and they are coming up. So I should have some pumpkins this fall. So.
Well, I went to go spray my corn and beans this weekend, and we both have one of those. I think you bought one not too long ago, but I've had it for a couple years. One of those Femco sprayers that you lay in the back of the bed of your ATV or side-by-side, and it's not a big round tank. It's a short square rectangle. So it lays in the bed and it has a boomless sprayer. They work fantastic. And I have had zero problems with mine, but I needed my side-by-side a few weeks ago from when I sprayed my residual before I planted. Went to put it back in the back of the side-by-side, and I don't know what happened, but the whole side of the casing of the pump was cracked. So I don't know if I backed into it with the zero turn while it was leaned up against the barn. It rolled over. I'm not sure, but so believe it or not, 3 trips to Tractor Supply to try to find parts and fittings, and it was a whole ordeal. I was back up and going finally today and was able to spray my beans and corn today. So my food plots look fantastic. We were hot all week this week, which really shot the corn up because we had a lot of moisture in the ground. 2 of my test plots are already knee high on corn, so I'm doing really well here. But we're going to be really hot again this week.
Oh, well, I'm doing really terrible here. We haven't had a good rain in a month. Now this week we had a storm come through, and I thought, man, this is a can't miss storm. Well, I got 4 tenths, and if just about 3 miles to the south of me, they got 2 inches. And down at Effingham, which is probably 20 minutes from me to the south, they got 5 inches in one morning. Now, I don't need 5 inches. But that 2 inches would have been really nice.
Yeah.
But instead, it was dry. But
5 inches, you would have had a creek out of the bank and lost a food plot anyway.
Right. But I could have sure used that 2 inches, but the 4/10 that we got, it was gone by lunchtime. The ground had soaked it up, and you couldn't hardly even tell that it rained that morning. So
well,
it is what it is.
We're gonna spend some time talking about weather and different conditions right now as it relates to doe and fawn health later in the podcast. But let's just I want to hear an update about your attempt to purchase a farm. Did you make any progress on that this week?
Well, I can check a couple more off my list that I had. Let's see, I knocked on a couple more doors, and then there was an auction. A property was being auctioned not too far from me in the auction. It was an online auction that ended on Friday. And well, I thought, $8,000 would have got that property for sure. And I thought 8,000 was more than I thought it was even worth. But it ended up bringing 9,600. And there was no way I was paying $10,000. Now I would have paid that, but there on this particular property, there was a couple other things that had to fall in place once I owned it. There was another property next to it that I thought I could probably buy, and I would have needed that property. If something would have happened that I couldn't buy it, well, that would have really affected the one that was auctioned. And then on the other side of that property, my neighbor owns a piece that he's got some guys hunting on it that I think I could have bought his. Well, he pretty much told me that I could buy his piece too. So I was going to have to buy 3 pieces, but the first one brought so much money that I didn't want to risk it. With those question marks, it was just big question marks. Would I be able to get both of the other properties and get them tied up at a reasonable price? So,
well, I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people that are either in the property market, looking for a recreational property or even a lease, I almost get the feeling sometimes people aren't patient. We talk about patience and discipline a lot, and you're going to be spending a lot of money. You might even, to get the property you want, we've talked about it the last couple episodes, you might have to pay a little bit more to get it because it might not even be on the market. But I don't think it's going to be a race to just have another piece of property. It's got to be the right one. And if you find the right one, it's okay spending the money. But I just think, especially with out-of-state leases and property, buyers, it's make sure you do your homework and get you something that falls in line with what your goals are. Just saying you own a piece of property in Illinois or Iowa or Missouri where people are trying to get, recreational properties might not be the right thing. You got to look for the right one.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I would have, if I would have spent 10 grand an acre, which it would have been essentially 10 grand an acre to get that property. I don't even know if that would have got it. The other bidder may have went even farther. But on 47 acres, you're talking $500,000. And then I would have had 2 other properties that I needed to tie up, and it was going to be, well, by the time the third property would have put me out of my budget. And
that means you're not retiring as early as you want to, is all that means.
Well, I think land right now is probably the best investment there is, because I'd be afraid to have a bunch of money in the, stock market or 401k, unless, well, depending on how you got it invested in that 401k. But, the market's so volatile right now. I think land's about the best investment out there. But at the same time, well, if it really hits the fan, the land market could take a major hit too, and you could spend $8,000 or $10,000 for land that's worth $3 in 6 months.
Right.
And where's that leave you?
Well, I think in the long term, everything will balance out. And it's like you said, if you buy this is going to be a property that you hang on to. It's not like you're, a venture capitalist looking to flip something by making the balance sheet look a little bit better. There's all different types of avenues, but with land, I think even if it dips a little bit, it'll stabilize out. It's just it's an interesting time right now for sure. I mean, like I said, that pump that I was going to look at, trying to replace on that sprayer, good grief, it's nothing's on the shelves right now. I'm in the same boat as 99% of our listeners, where you have very small window where you have available to do your job on the farm or whatever. And when something breaks, I don't have 3 days to order something online. I need to go get it. And good grief, I ended up, I think the pumps that we have on our sprayers, I think is like a 4.4 gallon per minute pump. And I ended up rewiring it and replumbing it and put a 7.5 gallon per minute pump on it, because that's all that was there. Ended up having to pay $300 for the stupid pump, but I can pump the herbicide out really quick now. I can definitely spray in a different gear, because it's pumping it out. But interesting times for sure. Before we start talking about fawn and doe health as it relates to the weather, whether it's too wet or too dry, big announcement this week, and that is those who have been waiting for the great debate that we did in Shipshewana, I believe in February, if I'm not mistaken. That video is produced and uploaded to your YouTube page, Chasing Giants. So the debate was you and Tony LaPratt in front of, I think, like 2,500, maybe 3,000 people. I don't know how many people were there. We filled that arena and had a great crowd, great event. But that video is now up on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, it is. And it's getting a lot of hits. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I haven't heard a negative word yet. We even got to talk about mechanical broadheads, doe factories, you name it. We covered it. And everybody that commented thought it was a very well done debate. The moderator did not pick sides. He was very fair to both Tony and myself. And the one comment that I probably heard the most was that Tony and I were very respectful of each other, even when we disagreed. So glad to hear that. Glad to hear people are liking it. But just go to Chasing Giants with Higgins Outdoors YouTube channel and look for the Legends debate, and you'll be able to listen to that.
Yeah, the big takeaway from me is, we've known Tony a long time, and the history that you guys talk about is it was a rocky relationship at certain points in time, but it's like everybody says, you learn to appreciate other people and other people's opinions, and it's okay to disagree, just like the listeners to this podcast. We hear every week and get criticized everything somebody's going to disagree with something that we say. But we hope that people take away different things and make you think a little bit, and doesn't mean we all have to align. We all have different goals. But if you're watching that video on Chasing Giants YouTube channel, the Legends Debate, you actually played a commercial for a new outlet that you have coming out. And I'll let you talk a little bit about it, and then we'll play that spot here on this podcast.
Yeah, so the listeners have been hearing me talk for probably over a year now that I've been filming with Steve Shields, and I mean we put together probably hundreds of hours of video, and Steve has been producing a number of videos, and we will be launching in the coming weeks, sometime before hunting season this fall. We're going to launch a subscription-based website called Whitetail Master Academy. And on that website, we got several different categories of videos, and new videos will be posted each week. But there's just to give the listeners some ideas. There's one category it's Don's tree stands. So we went to some of my tree stands on different properties. Steve has filmed it with a drone from the air. I've actually got up in these stands, and I filmed with the video camera, so the viewer gets to see the same view that I see while I'm in that stand. From the air, Steve is using graphics showing wind direction, what the bucks are doing, and each month we will feature a different tree stand. And then Steve went with me last winter on my consulting visits. So each month we're going to feature a property that I consulted on, And we're going to take a look at that property from an aerial from the beginning. I'm going to describe what I liked about that property, my concerns I had, and then we're going to lay out the plan that I put together for that property. So, there'll be one of those released each month as well. A subscriber, he can watch that channel, and at some point, there's probably going to be a property that is similar to his own. He'll be able to pick up some ideas, for designing his own property. And then we've got a segment on hunting tips. We got one on land management tips. We got one called Whitetail 101. It's for the greenest beginner. If you're a beginning deer hunter and you don't know hardly anything at all, we're going to take you step by step through a series of videos on getting you started off on the right foot. We've got one called All Things Whitetail. It's just a miscellaneous category for a topic that doesn't fit under the other topics. We've got Ask the Pros. We've got some video, basically interviews that we've done with different professionals. Dr. Bronson Strickland is going to be on there. We've got a couple with him, and just some other, professional biologists and people that are pros in their field. That's another one of the categories. But right out of the gate, there's going to be, if you just go to the website once it's up, and just so people know it's not live yet, if you go there'll be a landing page that basically tells you what's coming. But when we go live, there's going to be one free video in each category just to give you a feel for what you're going to get. And then as soon as you subscribe, there will be 2 more videos available in each category. And from that point on, we're going to be adding new videos each week, and hopefully cover a lot of topics that really, I promise you, we've already recorded some things that have never been talked about on any YouTube channel, any magazine article. Some new stuff that I've kind of kept to myself, things I've been doing here in the last year or two. So hope people enjoy that. And I guess you're going to play the promo video right now for people to see.
Yep, here it is.
Do you want to take your deer hunting success to the next level? Do you want to take your hunting property to the ultimate level? Don Higgins Whitetail Master Academy is a one-of-a-kind source of cutting-edge information to help whitetail hunters and land managers become more successful. By joining Don Higgins Whitetail Master Academy, you'll see firsthand video presentations on designing real hunting properties. You'll see Don's actual tree stand locations where he has harvested giant bucks, and hear him dissect these stand sites.
Today we're going to feature one of my favorite tree stands. So let me set the stage for you here. This stand is located along the west side.
You'll also learn hunting tactics specifically targeting mature bucks. This is the most in-depth resource online for hunting mature whitetail deer. Sign up today to unlock Don's secrets to success in the whitetail woods.
All right, Don, that's it's exciting. It's I guess people are going to question why a separate website, and I'm gonna lay it out a little bit, and then you can kind of dive into it a little bit more. One of the biggest feedbacks we get as we go around to trade shows, seminars, and everything is people just can't afford or try to make the time to either get to a master class or have you on their property as for a consulting trip. And we understand that, especially in today's economy. The other big concern we have is certain outlets where we can publish different content depending on what we say, what we do, and whether we fall in the line of the political nature at that time. Algorithms and suppression end up happening and keeping our channel from being seen. We've already been on probation, I think once or twice with this channel for talking about different things. And we just do not trust the future of some of these social media platforms to put content out. Saying that, the production quality of what Steve is doing with this information is extremely high end. And the reason it's subscription is it's expensive to do. This is not, video vlog style that people put on their YouTube channel where they going around holding a GoPro or a phone looking at themselves. This is high-end production to give everyone the best tools possible that cannot get to the master class or have you on your consulting. And I know I'm kind of speaking for you there, but I think if people really give it a chance, it will fill the gap of a lot of people that want to learn more that just don't have another avenue.
Right. You pretty well covered it, Terry, but the real big thing was when you put it out there on some of these other outlets, most of those are run by liberals. Let's just be honest. And their views on a lot of topics, and not just political topics, I'm talking social topics, do not align with ours.
Yep.
And it wasn't a few months ago that a lot of hunting channels on one of these outlets got shut down just because the people running that outlet are not favorable towards hunting.
Right.
And I didn't want to start something and grow it to significant size and then have it shut down by somebody else. This, we fully control it. The production is going to be much better than your typical YouTube video.
Right.
There's not going to be commercials in the middle of it. Like if you go to YouTube and watch videos, you're going to have to watch commercials in the middle of them. There's not going to be that. And it's some stuff that I've never seen. Not all of it, but a lot of it is stuff that I've never seen shared anywhere in any form or any venue, magazines, blogs, videos, whatever. So, and the other thing we want to hear from the subscribers, and we'll cover their topics. They throw an idea out there, just like this podcast with people submitting questions. We'll take their topics and we'll make videos out of them.
So we're not gonna go into detail and take time away in this podcast, but number one, don't call me about a question of this because I have nothing to do with this project. When we first started talking about it, I said I was too busy. So you're running with this. I'm there to support you, buddy, but I got my hands full with the foundation and everything else right now. So I respectfully decline to help do this. So I'm supporting you, but not involved. But the second thing is, as we get closer to the release of this, we're going to also provide more information about resources that will be offered to the subscribers. So it's not just paying to watch a video. There's going to be other things that you're going to get opportunities for. And I'll just leave it at that for right now. All right. Real important topic that we're going to cover is the health of fawns and does. And we're going to talk about that as soon as we come back from a message from our friends at Osseo Gear.
Osseo Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. Osseo Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatorial creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit OsseoGear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. Osseo Gear, prepared to be invisible.
All right, Don, please make sure you go out and follow Joe Miles. He's doing a lot of different content out there right now with his Osseo Gear, and we're going to be hunting in it this summer. But more importantly, we got some promotional stuff that we're going to be sending out here this summer. If you're interested in Osseo Gear, make sure you're following Chasing Giants with Don Higgins on social media, and we'll be forwarding that to you whenever Joe's ready. So Don, we're at about 4 hours apart. You're in Central Illinois. I'm in Northern Kentucky. Let's talk a little bit about fawns and does right now, because we're in completely different situations where I'm having a lot of rain and you're having a drought. What's going on, first of all, at a 30,000 foot view? Some of these fawns are basically like 30 days old. Some of them are a little bit newer. What's going on right now with the overall physiological side of a doe and a fawn right now?
Well, I mean, right now that when that fawn's first born, it's real critical that that fawn gets off to a good start. There is death losses to fawns for a number of reasons, and they're not just predators. The environment, the weather, will take a lot of them out, and so we need to do everything we can to make sure that that doe is going to have a big impact on the health of that fawn. So we need to be taking good care of our does. But something really interesting happened this week. So I think most of us have heard about those cattle out in Kansas that died here in the last week or so that they are saying was heat stress. And I know there's some other theories being thrown out there about what might have killed those cattle, but let's just assume that it was heat stress. I had a very interesting text this week from a friend of mine, Travis Phelps, who we go to the same church. Travis raises captive deer, and actually Travis and I had a conversation this morning about this as well. So he's been raising captive deer for 10 years, and in those 10 years, he's only lost 4 fawns in all that time. Well, this week, because of the heat, he's lost 6. Wow. 6 fawns in 1 week degrees, and it's we're in the midst of a drought as well. It's really hard on those critters. So a doe goes out and she has her fawns in traditional fawning type cover, which is often a grass field or a wheat field or hay field or something like that. That fawn is essentially out there in the sun all day long being baked, and they're just dehydrating, is what Travis was saying this morning. So it's something that these wild deer have to cope with just as well as those captive deer. Right. And in many cases, it's probably even tougher because that fawn that's in the wild, he may be hundreds of yards from any shade at all, where those captive deer typically are not that far from shade. If those young fawns have the wherewithal to go and find that shade. So it just makes me wonder how many wild fawns might have been lost this week in our area anyway to heat stress. Like I said, Travis lost 6 in 1 week, and in the previous 10 years, he'd only lost 4 fawns.
Right. So, last week I cultivated my sweet corn, which is out at the farm, and I had no reason to bring the cultivators back to my house. It's about 7 miles between the house and the farm. So I backed the cultivators in right next to the farm. Is an old dairy farm. So there's an old calf barn, and it's grown up around the outside of it. And there's a tree right beside the old grain bins. And I backed the cultivator up, and Don, I'm not kidding. I backed in the cultivator, and I don't know why, but it was all tall grass. I looked over my shoulder out the cab of the tractor before I set the cultivators down, and there was a fawn laying right there. I literally would have set the cultivators down on that fawn if I didn't look, and it was tucked back up underneath a shade tree. So, Todd Hewing last week from Biofarm was going, made a big point about making sure we're watching for fawns, and but no one talks about this, at least that I've heard, and that is the stress that gets put on these deer during dry drought areas. And it's not just the fawns, but also the does. So, that fawn is dependent on the lactation of the mom. She's got to be under just as much stress, when in drought conditions where there's not a lot of water, really serious heat, to do what she has to do as a mother, and that's produce milk.
Right. And, just to take this a step further, Terry, these deer, especially in my area, not so much what you're dealing with at the moment with plenty of rain, but here in this drought that we're dealing with, these deer are definitely stressed, but those drought conditions could lead to an EHD outbreak later in the summer. So if they're already stressed now, it could just make them much more susceptible
Right.
to EHD later in the summer. And Travis mentioned to me today, he says, I usually start feeding your EHD feed to my captive deer in midsummer. But he said, because of the stress they're dealing with right now, he says, I went this week to the Real World office and I picked up some of that Expect Healthy Deer technology feed supplement to start feeding this deer.
Yeah, so that's exactly where I wanted to go, and not to pitch a product, but understanding your weather conditions, whether you're in a swamp, whether you're, really wet or whether you're really dry. Stress has an effect on antler growth, on lactation, on, your fawn, whatever you call it, however many die, fatality rate, I guess is what yeah. So when you're dealing with something in your environment locally at your farm that's increasing the stress level, that's going to have a trickle out effect. That could mean that deer can't fight off insects as much as it needs to later in the summer. That might mean real bad midge-net season, where we're going to have EHD. And nobody seems to talk about it. And, I don't want to get you on a tangent and have you wailing your arms around, but this is the perfect example of why we want nutrition on our properties, to try to take that stress away and keep the highest nutrition the entire summer, because different situations are always going to present themselves to add stress. And the only way you can protect that is habitat and food.
Right. With both plants and animals, the first ones that are hit with a disease or a pest is going to be those that are stressed. A disease comes into a cattle herd. Well, guess what? It's not going to first hit the most healthy cow out in the pasture.
Right.
It's going to hit that one that she's maybe got parasites, or she's been milked down and in poor body condition. And that's why it's so critical. And it just really bugs me that we've got these people that are against supplemental feeding, and they do so under the guise of disease concerns.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
It's almost, it doesn't make any sense really, because the healthier the deer, the better that deer can fight off disease issues. And supplemental feed, the right supplemental feed, I'm not saying shelled corn, but a good quality supplemental feed can actually, set your deer up to be better equipped to deal with parasites and disease issues.
And we know that everybody's dealing with different situations. Some people are wet, some people are dry. Good grief, Minnesota's been hit by 10 tornadoes. Have that nutrition program, whatever you're allowed to do, max it out, diversify it. But the follow-up question I have, we focus on food a lot, and we focus on, I put mineral out today, excuse me. But from a habitat standpoint, when we are risking a potential drought like you're in, I look at your farm and what you just mentioned, comparing it to some of the big open ag country where there's just a lot of open switchgrass and no shade. Can you talk a little bit about this? Is also one of the keys for diversity in your habitat and structure. You have you have woods and you have grasses, you have both. And that diversity that you're putting on your farm, and not all your eggs in one basket, because there's going to be pluses and minuses for both throughout the year.
Yeah, I'm always promoting diversity, especially in food sources, is where I'm often promoting it. The more different food sources you have, or plant species you have within your plots, the better a deer can balance his diet. Well, that diversity is also important in the cover. Wooded cover is going to provide browse as well as the cover, but it can also provide thermal cover in severe winter conditions or whatever. Diversity is key across the board, both in food and in cover. So, don't throw all your eggs in one basket, like you say, Terry.
I think if I'm honest with myself, we always take these conversations naturally, because I mean, good grief, the show is called Chasing Giants. We always take it to, oh, you want diversity in your cover because some bucks are always going to like the grass, some bucks are always going to like the timber. But from when they're this time of the year, it's just such a pivot point for the health of our herd as they're growing antlers and as they're trying to raise the bucks that we're going to try to hunt in 5 years. It's such an important part of it that our habitat projects, our food sources, and yes, having food on your property through the summer is so vital. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it for this reason. And, if you're able to supplemental feed, put your mineral out, and you're in a drought area, please get it out now. Not a high salt product, but a true mineral. Because the stress of that animal as we get into insect season, ticks, all that kind of stuff, again, that ripple out effect of your herd health is going to come back into play.
Yeah, as good stewards and deer managers, we're chasing giants. We're trying to grow giants, and that means taking care of the health of the entire herd. We're not just focusing on bucks. We're not just focusing on old bucks. We're focusing on doing the best we can as stewards of the entire herd, as well as the habitat.
Right. All right. With that, let's move on. I want to get the first question of the night up on the screen for you, and then we'll take a break and listen to a message from our friends from Quiet Cat.
Okay, the first one comes from Enos Miller from Sullivan, Ohio. He says, "Hello, Don and Terry. I have two questions. The first one is for Don. I have heard you say when planting switchgrass for bedding, the bigger the better. If I remember correctly, you said it should be at least 5 acres. In episode 121, when talking about your buck from around 1990, which, by the way, I wasn't born yet, you said he was in a small patch of cover around about 50 yards by 150 yards, and that big bucks love small patches like that. I would love to hear you explain that. Second question is, I have never heard you guys talk about what kind of safety harness you use. I will not hunt from a small hang-on stand without one, but with the harness I feel tied up and it restricts my movement. Just curious what you guys have found that works for you. Also, I would like to hear you explain the whole story about the king buck sometime. LOL. Thanks for all you guys do. God bless. Well, I'm going to answer your first two, and I'm going to leave Terry to answer the king buck part of it and give Terry time to think about that as I'm answering. So, I get it, Enos. It almost seems like I was contradicting myself, when I say big bucks like small cover. But then on the same token, I'll say if you're planting switchgrass, the bigger the patch, the better. And what you got to realize is that we're talking about two totally different scenarios. So first, the little patches. Let's cover that. When I'm talking about looking for little patches because big bucks like those, I'm talking about in areas that are heavily hunted, not where I own ground, where I'm just out looking for permission to properties. I'm looking for places that other deer hunters overlook. And that's the same thing that a mature buck is looking for. He's looking for places where hunters don't go. And often those are very small, out of the way places. That's just where I found a lot of the bucks that I've killed over the years, is in very small, out of the way, overlooked places. That's in a heavily hunted region. When I talk about switchgrass and the bigger the better, I'm talking about you own or you control a property, and you want to do everything you can to increase your chances of holding a mature buck. And in those situations, the bigger the cover, the better. Sure, if it's little, you can attract a buck as well, but that requires zero human intrusion. That means you can't go there either, even though you own it. That's what attracts those bucks. If you own a property and you have the opportunity to do what you want, then the bigger the cover, the better off you're going to be. So we're talking two totally different situations when I'm talking big patches of switchgrass and small pieces of cover for bucks.
You know, we produced a video a long time ago that we're not able to share, and that's another side topic that'll get me pissed off that why we can't share it anymore. But anyway, you know,
we may get Terry fired up on this issue,
but
or this episode.
But well, let me take a step back. I am very thankful for our listeners because they listen so close to everything that's talked about on this that these questions come up, and I don't mind it one bit because it shows us how serious people take what we're talking about. But I forget the number of bucks that you talked about in the video that we had to take down that came out of a stand of switchgrass versus where you're talking about one buck gets pushed to a small little piece of cover. I can't remember how many bucks was it that you referenced on that where you saw them come out.
Yeah, I had a patch of switchgrass that was 8 acres, and I had 8 bucks in one evening come out of 8 acres of switchgrass. So that means there was a buck per acre.
Yeah. So great question. And, I really appreciate how people take everything we say and listen and try to improve their property. But I think you did a fantastic job explaining the difference of you look for small patches, and some of them are going to be out in the middle of nowhere that no one would ever expect a buck like Trump. But if I'm managing my property, I want to hold as many of them as I can.
Right.
All right. So what was the second question that he talked about?
The second question was about the
safety harness.
Yeah. Well, I use a probably one of the first safety belts, if you will, that come along. It's called Tree Hopper. And in fact, just this afternoon, as I was putting together the outline for this episode, I went and did a search for Tree Hopper, and I found they are still in business. And I've got 2 of their safety belts. They are fantastic for, using as a safety harness as you're hanging a tree stand or while you're hunting. They're adjustable to different size trees and such. I've been using it for probably 20 years or more now. Still have the same one. Very, very well made, very strong. It's not a harness. It's more of a belt, just a style that I prefer because of trying to get that harness around, your clothing, especially in cold weather when you got, some really thick layers of clothing on. This belt being adjustable is just a whole lot handier for me. So that's what I use. How about you, Terry?
I'll take a lot of flack from this, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not going to do anything but be honest. I've had to swallow my pride the last few years. I went through a phase when I was younger and more stupid, not realizing the responsibilities that I have where I didn't wear a harness and was in probably some situations that weren't really safe. If you remember our friend Patrick, his cousin Danny York and I remember we got up in a poplar. We had to have been, good grief, 40, 45 feet up in the air, and that thing was only about 8 inches in diameter with both of us up there, and I wasn't strapped in. As I've gotten older, I've heard stories about our friend Jeff Gibson and other people. Was it Jeff Gibson that fell?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because he talked about it at the master class one time.
Right.
Yep. I hear these stories, and I just realized that I have a wife that puts up with this passion that I have. The least I can do is be safe, especially when I'm hunting out of state by myself a lot. She doesn't even know where I'm at sometimes. So we had an incident with one of the elders in our church this last year, and he fell going in and out of a ladder stand. He was trying to carry his weapon as he was going down the ladder and fell and got hurt. The only way they even found him was he had an Apple Watch on that he could do the SOS thing from it. So I've made a promise to my wife that that I'll be safer, especially when I'm by myself and out of town. The harness that I wear, I do not think is available. As people know, we're partnered with Novix, who is the original lone wolf, And back in the day, they made a harness that I got from them, and I still wear that one today. But it goes around your legs and over your shoulders. It's a true harness that hooks up to the back of your back. But I've worn hunter safety systems before. The thing I like about them is it's like putting on a vest. So when it's dark and you're trying to get dressed at the back of your truck, you're not trying to, stick your legs and arms through something that you can't find the right hole. So I've worn a couple different ones over the years, but right now I wear a one that's got a Lone Wolf logo on it, but I don't think it's available. I don't think they sell it anymore.
Yeah, on the topic of safety, I'll throw something else out that I do that I think is a good idea, and others should probably copy, is that my wife and I have apps on our phones where she can track exactly where I'm at. So if I my phone is at, and she could send somebody in to check on me, whatever. And I forget the name of the app, but I'm sure there's probably multiple apps that'll do that. And I suggest that any hunter get that app or a similar app on their phone. And, who knows what could happen. There's 1,000 different things that could happen, and you're laying out there totally unconscious, and someone could find you in a timely manner, no matter where you are.
Yeah. So, it's, I know that the technology and safety harnesses and lineman ropes and, the rope that goes up the side of the tree when you're getting in and out. I'm needing to get better. And I know a lot of people will have a bunch of smart aleck comments and advice, and that's okay. But I'm being just totally truthful. Over the last probably 5 years, I've had to accept the fact that I do have much more responsibility with my wife and my family. That it's my responsibility to make sure I'm not leaving them hung, out to dry for being stupid, especially when I'm out by myself.
Yep. Well, over the years, I've hunted many hunts without a safety belt whatsoever, but don't promote it in any way whatsoever. But that leaves us with the most important question that this guy had, Terry, and that's about the king buck.
Do we really want to go into this?
It's probably one of the most comical things I've ever seen in the hunting industry or world.
So we're in Northeast Ohio, up in Amish country at a trade show, and there was another guest speaker there. Don was speaking as a seminar speaker there. There was another guy there that, let's just say, had some of the most out of the box thinking that I've ever heard in my life. Well, we kind of set Don up, and we had already heard part of the spiel, and you had never heard of this guy. So we told Don that he had to go listen to this seminar. And you came out like 4 minutes after it started with smoke coming out your ears. Almost so upset that this guy was there basically trying to take people's money for this. So I don't think it's right for us to bash somebody by name on here, but let's just say that there is a lot of people out there selling some really weird thinking, and the only reason it's selling is because it's so different, not any way, shape, or form. But I'll give everybody an example of the king buck mentality. 2 things that this guy said. If you ever get a trail camera picture of a buck with one of his back legs up, like scratching his face or anything like that, you can go ahead and cross that buck off the list of being the most dominant buck in your area, because the most dominant buck would never expose its genitals to a trail camera or to another deer. So it would never raise his leg up, expose his undercarriage to anybody. So as everybody's listening to the podcast, probably laughing right now, I'm dead serious. That's what this said.
Yep.
Then the other thing is when you walk into your stand, you and this guy was about finding trails in the woods. You had to go into the woods to hunt, and but when you walked in, you had to stomp like take your foot up and like 2 feet in the air and stomp, then another step. And then, but you had to hurry and get up in your stand really quick because you want the king buck in your area to hear you stomping, and he's going to come looking to pick a fight because he thinks another buck is in his area. So this guy had a whole presentation of these things. So I hope that gives you a little insight about what the king buck jokes are that we talk about. But I can tell you, I've seen Don mad many times in my life over the last 17 years, and he was furious with what this guy was trying to tell people.
Well, there's no doubt that there was a lot of bad information being presented that weekend, and I just got a thing with people being ripped off. And this guy was selling a product, and people were buying it, and I knew it was going to do them. It was not going to help them kill a deer in any way, shape, or form. And but some of the things that we witnessed, Terry don't want to even tell the good stuff. He don't want to, he's sitting there laughing. He don't even want to tell the good stories. The things we witnessed were beyond belief. This was deer hunting comedy, is what it turned into. But it
really was. It was like somebody was trying to put a spoof on something and like come up with the most ridiculous things ever. I've never seen anything like it. So it's I apologize for the jokes sometimes that we pull off and people don't know what we're talking about when we say the king buck. But for those of you, seriously, this is very serious though. For those of you who get a picture of a buck with his leg up in the air, don't shoot it because there's one older than him, because the old buck would never raise and show his undercarriage to you. All right, with that, let's listen.
Time to move on.
Yeah, let's listen to a spot from our friends at Quiet Cat.
Hey, Spinks from Quiet Cat here in our virtual showroom space where you can connect with a product expert and learn all about our bikes, our accessories, and what makes Quiet Cat the leader in off-road electric bikes. Schedule a live session today by clicking in the link below or going to quietcat.com/meet.
How important do you guys believe it is to have your deer scored by a professional and put into the books if they score high enough? I know some people say to honor the animal, you must put them in the books, and other people say it doesn't matter. Just wondering your opinions on that. Thanks. Well, Trevor, I think it's a personal opinion or a personal choice. I've got bucks, a couple that I've entered into the books just because I had them officially scored. Just to see where they was at. Mel was one of those. I had no idea he would end up the number 6 all-time typical killed with a bow, but I thought he might be in the top 100 or so, and I was just kind of curious where he was going to fit in. The other thing is my 200s, I've had them scored just because I don't want anybody to question the score. If they do, I got the score sheets to show it. I know there's some guys out there claiming 200-inch bucks that you look at the picture and, obviously there's some things you can't see from pictures, but sometimes you're left scratching your head thinking that buck's 25 inches from 200. And I just don't ever want to be put in that category. My integrity means a lot to me. So sometimes I have certain bucks scored just to back up what I'm saying. Whether you do or not, it's 100% personal choice. One thing I will say, though, is that both Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett organizations, I respect them a lot because they promote good ethics and they promote good stewardship. And I think those are two things that are really lacking in the hunting community today. I'm not saying that I agree with either organization 100% on everything they do, but I certainly respect them for, standing up for issues that nobody else will take a stand on.
Yep, I couldn't said it better myself. No matter what you decide, there's somebody that's going to disagree with you.
Right.
And there's one type of person that you left off of here. That's the people that won't get their buck officially scored because their tape measure stretches 20 inches longer. So,
And they know it. And they know it. They know the buck doesn't score what they claim. They'll never take it to have it officially measured.
but who cares? I think that I think it's just another piece that people can enjoy. Tracy Dixon down in West Virginia hosted a buck scoring party and got a bunch of people together and raised money for charity. Got kids involved, so I have no problem with it either way. It's just if it's a way for you to stay accountable to the goal that you set at the beginning of the season, by all means, if it's a 110-inch deer, go have it scored. I think it's a way to learn. I'm not going to get another one officially scored until I get one that has a chance of being a net booner, but that's just me. None of mine are in a book. When I kill one big enough to be in a book, I might put it in there.
There's nothing wrong with doing it or not doing it.
All right, well, let's take a quick break and talk about the Lester's Feet Foundation this week. We have just a few more days, people, to get their tickets ordered. Now, I want to make sure I should have had this queued up, so I'm going to share my screen real quick over to the website. Everybody should be able to see it right now. Can you see it, Don?
I can.
All right, so we only have a few more days. June 27th is the last day. So this is the website right here, Lester's Feet Project. The easiest way to find this is to go to our website, which is the lestersfeetfoundation.org. Solid Rock Chapel, which is Don's home church, is hosting this raffle. And you can see all of the information. Now, for those of you who want to mail in a check, you need to do it right now. Don't wait another day because the U.S. Postal Service is definitely not very fast, okay? You want to write your check, make your check out to Solid Rock Chapel, okay? And grab a pen. I'm getting ready to tell you the address to mail your checks to. Mail it to Solid Rock Chapel, P.O. Box 172, Sullivan, Illinois, 61951, and you can buy one ticket for $25 or 5 for $100 in any increments that you want. So if you want $500 worth of tickets, then you can buy that. You can win multiple times. So we're giving away a brand new Chevy Silverado truck, which, by the way, got delivered. Chris Yates called me this week, and the truck is on the lot. We'll be pushing some pictures of that this week and having a final push. But people, please understand, we're 100% volunteer organization. Don's wife, Robin, has been helping us a lot. The sooner you get this to us, the better we can prepare for the raffle on July 4th. Which it's not a weekend, it's a Monday, I believe. But we're going to do the live raffle and draw names to see who wins all of these 75 prizes valued at $150,000. People like to hear the stories, and real quick, I'll tell you about a family that we learned about this week. She single mom and was trying to get everything in arranged and prepared for the baby coming, but the baby was born at 29 weeks. So caught everybody off guard. She wasn't prepared for it. The baby was in NICU, and thankfully the team of doctors and everybody were able to put the baby under care. Baby's doing great. But guess what? The mom's place where she lived is not suitable for a preemie baby coming out of NICU. They found a bunch of mold in the apartment. The roof leaks. And this is just a simple situation of a connection made, an open door by one of our podcast listeners that says, hey, I know this family and they're in trouble. So the lady couldn't afford the buyout on the lease because there was a penalty that she had to pay if she terminated the lease early. She needed a deposit on another place. So we were able to go in and call that landlord. And let's just say the foundation can sometimes work some magic when it comes to getting people to do the right thing. But we helped this young single mother with a baby coming out of NICU to buy out her existing lease, put a deposit, and pay a couple months lease to get her feet on the ground to put that baby in a situation where it's healthy and safe. And thanks to the people who donate, these bills were paid directly on behalf of the family. We know it went to the right spot. 100% of the dollars that you guys donate or buy raffle tickets goes to families like this. So with that, let's go ahead and put the next.
I want to throw one thing out there, Terry, about the Lester's feet while we're talking about it. Right. We like to help people connected with the podcast. You guys are the ones financially supporting this foundation. So we like to help those connected, with our supporters. But the way to connect is not by texting Terry or I or sending us an email. If you go to lestersfeet.org, there is a form you can fill out right there online. And a lot of that has to do with legal reasons. We could be accused of discrimination or something like that. All of these funds that we pay out has to originate with that form on the website. Someone from the family has to fill it out. Terry and I cannot do it. So if you have a person that you think would be a good fit, please go to lestersfeet.org and fill out the form for us. Thank you.
LestersFeetFoundation.org, but you were close.
Okay.
But the bottom line in people is this thing has gotten so big. There's a lot of compliance that I deal with. We have a fantastic board of directors and group of volunteers that helps us vet families out. And it's hard to keep up with the volume of requests that we get now, but we have to be in compliance. And that starts with someone that can speak for the family, filling out that very simple application at lestersfeetfoundation.org. Please don't send Don or I a message saying, here's a family, please look into it. We can't do it. We're just going to push you right back to that same place. So
the Lester's Feet Foundation is a 100% volunteer, nonprofit organization whose sole mission is to help families with sick children. The impact on families who have children with life-altering illnesses can be devastating and often requires one or both parents to be away from work. Through our fundraising efforts and the help of our generous donors, Lester's Feet works with families to help alleviate the financial burdens associated with caring for their children through such a challenging time. 100% of donations and fundraising profits go directly to the families we are supporting. We are excited to announce that Solid Rock Chapel in Sullivan, Illinois is supporting our foundation by hosting a huge raffle with $150,000 worth of prizes, including a new Chevy truck, a John Deere tractor, a material kit to a post frame building, and much more. The drawing will be on July 4th, 2022. So please visit us at www.lestersfeetfoundation.org to purchase your raffle tickets and learn more about our organization.
All right, question number 3. Let's get to it.
All right, this one comes from Andre Miller from Auburn, Kentucky. He says, "Hi, Don and Terry. Love the podcast and all the informative content. This question is for Don regarding aging a deer. How do you age deer that you have on camera? I understand that you say aging deer by photos is impossible. Mel was 4 when you shot him. Just curious how you knew and if you verify the deer you shoot by sending in the jawbone. Thanks." Andre, the way I do it is by trail camera history. I don't believe you can look at a picture of a buck and say, boom, he's 4 years old. But I do believe you can look at a buck and say he's 1 year old, or most of the time 2 years old, and you can be pretty accurate. Once they get 3 and older, that's when it becomes difficult. So with Mel, I had the trail camera history from the time he was a 1.5 year old buck. And if you would see the pictures of that deer at 1.5, there is no doubt he's a 1.5 year old deer. He had a 10-point rack, but I'm telling you, it was a little 10-point rack, and I'm telling you, he was a 1.5 year old buck. I did not send the jawbone off for Mel, and I regret it. I'll tell you, I meant to. I had COVID at the time, and I to be honest, I just wanted to get that deer hung up and processed and back in bed when that happened. That's a big regret because I would have loved to have been able to prove to people that was a 4-year-old deer. Today, on a lot of the deer that I shoot, I do send them in. Later that year, the same year I shot Mel, when I shot the Joey buck, I sent in his teeth, and they were aged at 8.5 years old. And I knew that he was at least 7.5 just based on trail camera history, but he ended up being 8.5. And I'm not saying that I am 100% accurate every single time, but there are certain bucks where I know I'm accurate, and Mel was one of them. The old guy buck that Terry shot a few years ago on my farm, I think I told Terry that's a 9.5-year-old buck at least. Terry sent the teeth in, he was 10.5. That's probably the oldest buck that I've been involved with, and Terry ended up shooting him. But so sometimes I do send the teeth in, and here lately I've been sending more and more in as I shoot bucks, especially bucks that I may not have trail camera history with, clear back when they were yearlings or 2-year-olds.
Yeah, and boy, this is going to sound a little arrogant, and I hope people don't take it that way. Sometimes we have to do things, and sometimes you don't care if the buck's 6 or 7, but sometimes we just have to prove it because there's so many naysayers and doubters that it's just part of documenting the story of what we're trying to preach. But to look at, it's already started. I've already seen stuff on social media. How old is this buck coming up? And I'm telling you, the original reason that stuff was posted was just to get engagement and get a lot of comments. You're just falling for a social media algorithm of engagement to try to get more views and likes by participating in those things. There is no way that you can dial that in based on the brisket or the sag in the back behind the front shoulders, or every deer's different. I'm a different size than Don is. How old am I?
Mm-hmm. It does work for the king buck, though. If you see that leg in the air, you know he's not a mature one.
I saw a video today of this big old monster bull. I mean, just, like a rodeo bull, one of these giant, and he had this stick in his mouth and he was scratching himself up underneath of his legs with the stick in his mouth. And I'm like, work harder, or smarter, not harder. So I don't know what the king buck would say about that video. Maybe I should send it to him on social media. So that buck would have to be at least 6 or 7 if he knew how to scratch himself like that.
I'm not even going there.
All right, I can't resist. So this king buck thing's gonna get us off on a sidetrack. We actually have a mutual friend that Don and I. You weren't really as much part of it. I like to play jokes on people, but we had this guy convinced that Don and I aged deer, that we would set our trail cameras up strategically to where we'd always get a picture of the deer from the rear end, not the front, because we claimed that the only way you could really age a deer is measure the distance from the bottom of his giblies to his butthole. And the older he got, the farther down, the greater the distance. And we had this guy going, I'm not kidding, for at least a whole hunting season. I think he was actually trying to set his trail cameras up to where he would get pictures of deer from the rear end. So funny story. But anyway, let's move on to question number 4.
All right, this one comes from Josh Cerrone from Ridditt, Illinois. Never heard of that town, Josh. Anyway, he says, Don and Terry, have you ever spoken to drop tines or drop tine regularity throughout a buck's life? I've been told that a buck with drop tine genetics will only produce the drop tine once in its life, making shooting one even more rare. Not only rare from the genetic makeup, but also the happenstance of shooting one on the specific year it produces. I understand that is likely untrue for all bucks with irregular points, but is there any truth with that theory? Thanks. Keep up the good work of spreading God's truths. Well, Josh, there's absolutely no truth whatsoever to that. If a buck's got drop tine genetics, he can express it every single year he's got a rack, or maybe just some years. But the idea that he's only going to express it one year is just totally false. That's the quick and short answer on that one.
I think that they can have it all the time. They can go back and forth with them, without them. I've only been around one buck with a drop tine, and I know for sure that the year after he had a drop tine, he did not have a drop tine. But he didn't live to make it the following year to know whether it came back or not. But a lot of misconceptions when it comes to genetics, though.
Drop tines are pretty darn rare. I've only seen 2 drop tine bucks in my entire life. Both of those bucks were on the same property that I leased probably 25 years ago, and they were both seen the same season. They were different bucks, and those are the only 2 that I've ever seen with drop tines in my life. I'd love to shoot a drop tine buck one of these days.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, I guess I should have mentioned this when we started the podcast, but the buck that's behind Dawn, we're gonna talk about that for the next buck profile that we're gonna feature on this podcast episode. We're gonna do that here after the last question. But before we put the last question of the night up, Dawn, just give everybody a quick run through about your seminar schedule that starts July 13th.
Yep, going on a seminar tour out east July 13th. It's going to start that day in Hamilton, Indiana on the 13th. I'm going to give phone numbers for each one of these locations. Please do not call or text me with questions. I'm just going to show up. I've been flooded with questions on all these different events, and I'm not responsible for any of the things that are going to happen there. I'm just showing up and speaking. I can't answer your questions. So as I go through this list, if you got questions, feel free to call them. So July 13th in Hamilton, Indiana, which is right up in the northeast corner near Ohio and Michigan. The seminar will be at 6:30 that evening at Double H Farms, Hamilton, Indiana. If you got any questions, call 567-210-8919. The next night, July 14th, I'm going to be at Byler's Trophy Blinds in Fredonia, Pennsylvania. They're going to have a benefit supper at 5 p.m., seminar at 6:30. They're going to give away a Raven crossbow and a CVA inline muzzleloader that night. Any questions on that one, call 724-475-1111. Next night, July 15th, I'm going to be at the John Koblenz Farm in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. There will be a benefit supper from 4 to 6 p.m. and the seminar is at 6. Any questions on that one? Call 814-427-4243. The next night, July 16th, I'm going to be at Lost Creek Ag in Oakland Mills, Pennsylvania. I do not have details on that one yet. For any questions, call 717-463-3060. The next day is a Sunday, no seminar. Then July 18th, I'm going to be at Dwayne Burkholder's Real World Dealer in Penn Yan, New York. There will be a supper at 5 p.m., seminar at 6 p.m. Number 585-554-0200. And then I got 3 seminars in a row, Bordeaux Brothers. They have farm stores throughout the Northeast, and they got 3 open houses at different stores. The first one on July 20th is in Canton, New York. If you got any questions about that, 315-386-2750. The next night, I'll be at Bordeaux Brothers store in Detroit, Maine. Number there, 802-458-3916. The following night, the 22nd, I'll be at the Bordeaux Brothers store in Sheldon, Vermont. Number there, 802-933-2277. Those Bordeaux Brothers events are, they'll have free food at 5 p.m. and there'll be multiple speakers. I'll just be one of the speakers, but the speakers start at 6 p.m. The last event will be July 23rd at another Real World Dealer, Daniel King, at Canajoharie, New York. There's going to be this is on a Saturday. There'll be a chicken dinner and ice cream at noon. The seminar will be at 1 p.m. Number for that is 518-859-3310. Some things to throw out about these events. These events are free. The seminar is free. There may be charges for the food. You don't have to come for the food. You can show up just for the seminar if you want, and that seminar will be free at every event. There will be real-world products available at every event. And the seminar topic, a lot of people have called and want to know what the topic's going to be. It's going to be ultimate whitetail nutrition and food plots. And then there'll be a question and answer session at the end, so you can talk about anything you want during that question and answer session. So I hope to see you folks at one of those events.
We appreciate the patience of everybody who is watching you read that on the screen, listening on YouTube. But we really appreciate the patience. So many of our listeners are listening on Apple Podcast only, or our Amish friends listening on MTech, that we have to read all of that information off. So appreciate everybody's patience. But speaking of long text, buddy, I feel bad for you. You're going to have to read question number 5. And this one's a doozy, man. It's like 3 pages long. I had to really work to get it all on one page.
Well, this last one comes from Steve Swearing from Pleasant Hill, Iowa. Steve says, it has come up a few times lately about people asking questions regarding throw and grow food plots. Your answers seem to always turn into a pissing match about roller crimpers and so forth. Well, Steve, one thing I appreciate about you is you don't beat around the bush. You throw her out there, buddy. He says, I have heard you say that in proper conditions, seed can be thrown out and it will grow. I would like to see you talk a little bit more about this. I have been making food plots with no equipment except a weed whip and backpack sprayer for 10 years or so now, and I have come up with a way to make it really work well. I start by spraying my area first thing in the spring, spraying the area I want to plant right after spring green up. I will then spray again about a month or so later, then a third time in the fall when I plant. I personally like to plant turnips and forage radishes sometime in the fall, timed with rain. Sometimes earlier and sometimes later. I seed this light to ensure I get good bulb size, especially for the radishes, as they will help loosen up compaction in the soil for year 2. Then I go in and fill in the rest of the plot with winter rye. I've had great draw to these properties year 1. The winter rye really helps to choke the weeds out as well. Then I can go in beginning of year 2 and frost seed clover into that. I have one right now I planted this spring with real world clover, and it looks as good as any clover plot anyone else I know has. Feel free to reach out and I'll forward some pictures. Now I do understand that timing on planting with rain is a must. I have a very flexible schedule, so I am able to make it work. I think this is something that you should dive in a little deeper on, because there are a lot of people, and young guys especially, who may have the time and motivation to do work, but may never have an ability to work dirt. My feeling is your previous answers to these questions may make some people who don't have all the big toys think that food plots aren't something they can do, and I know for a fact that just is not true. I know it isn't for everyone due to timing constraints, but there are plenty of folks that I think could greatly benefit from this technique or something similar to it. Thanks for everything you guys do for the hunting world and Lester's feet. I look forward to picking up my new truck from the raffle really soon. God bless, and let's go, Brandon. Well, Steve, can we first talk about roller crimpers? No, I'm just kidding. Steve brings up a great point, and I want to start with the idea or the fact that I think a lot of people misunderstand or interpret different terms differently. So when I talk about throw and grow, I'm talking about no prep has been done. And what Steve has described here, he's doing prep. He's spraying, and he's using a weed whip to knock weeds down. And absolutely, that's a great way. In fact, I just talked last week about spraying the plots on Terry's Illinois lease property. And I think the best way that we're going to have success on those plots this fall is pretty much exactly what you've described here, except maybe on a little bigger scale with ATV sprayers. And we went in and we sprayed those plots. And what I'm thinking we do is we go in and we spray them again right before planting time, and then just broadcast the seed on top of the ground, which there's a lot of seeds that'll work fine if you get a rain on them, and which Steve has mentioned. Oats, rye are a couple of them. The plot topper blend is another really good one. So what I'm thinking we should do on Terry's lease is go in there, do that second spraying, broadcast the seed mix, and then come in with a mower and mow down those dead weeds after the spray has killed them, and put a layer of thatch over the top of that seed. And also that mower will, if there's any seed hung up on those dead plants or whatever, it's going to knock it off and get it to the ground. And you absolutely, but in my view, what you described is not throw and grow. Throw and grow, in my opinion, is zero prep has been done to that plot. So the reason I use this question is there's very likely other listeners out there who have the same idea that Steve does, that we're promoting, plots grown with tractors and bigger equipment and such, and that we're forgetting about the little guy. We absolutely are not forgetting about the little guy. In fact, that's how I started. I planted a lot of food plots walking with a hand crank spreader through the plot. I planted plots with a hand sprayer, going out there and spraying the weeds with a hand sprayer and such. So I've done it that way, and there's situations today where I still might do that. But so we're not forgetting the little guy. But the big thing is, when we talk about throw and grow, we're talking about the idea that absolutely zero work has been done to that plot before the seed is spread. And I think that's the way.
Yeah, there's actually a product called Throw and Go, which was what we were referencing. I think that's the first misunderstanding here, where you literally tear the bottom of the bag off and walk through the woods and drop seed on, open wood cover is what the stuff is made for. That's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think it's a great question, and the reason I selected that question is I wanted to clear that up for any listener who thinks that we're only promoting plots being planted with tractors and big equipment. That's not the case at all. I mean, you can go out there with a little garden sprayer and, a string trimmer, and you can make a really nice plot, which Steve has been doing. So, anybody else that has that idea, don't think that we're looking down on you, that we're forgetting you.
No, Steve, I mean, we've both been to where we've had to, before we had equipment. I've sprayed a 2-acre bean field with backpack sprayers before. So, Steve, I tip my hat to you, buddy. There is no excuses. You have found a way to do it. You've worked hard, and your process that you laid out, I can't suggest anything different. But to the bigger picture here is most people in today's society do not want to be part of the process. They want to be part of the outcome. Steve's not one of those guys. He's diving into the process of what that is, because he's even talking year 1, year 2, big plan, big picture here, and finding a way to get it done. Unfortunately, most people falling for gimmicks is what we're trying to discourage people from doing, is just being, I'm going to open up a bag, dump it out, and that's it. I don't want to be part of the process. I want to be part of the outcome. But Steve, tip my hat to you, buddy. Well done.
Yep.
All right, with that, let's take a couple minutes here and talk about the buck behind you. But this is going to be really poor footage for the people watching on YouTube. But the way the screen's cut, I'm going to ask Don to pick his laptop up and kind of show a little bit more of that buck. And then I'll get him to text me some pictures. Whoa, that's really choppy. We'll text some pictures and lay over for the people watching on YouTube. So, Don, let's talk a little bit about this buck. Describe him for the people listening. That way they since they can't see him. And the story behind it and a lesson learned from this one.
Well, this buck was shot in 1986. And I remember that year because that's the year Robin and I first started dating. So it's pretty easy for me to remember that buck.
So you had a mullet.
I had a mullet, actually. Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to show a picture. Actually, I showed a picture of this buck on my social media a couple weeks ago. I've been on Thursdays, I've been posting old photos, throwback Thursday photos on my social media. And this buck was actually featured here a couple weeks ago. And the story behind this buck is I shot him 2 days after the first Illinois gun season. So our gun season in Illinois is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday before Thanksgiving. And then they take a break, and then a couple weeks later they have another weekend season. So the first gun season had just ended, and it was 2 days later on Tuesday. There was a sanctuary where no hunting was allowed, where a lot of deer would pile in. And with gun season over, I figured that no hunting area had a bunch of deer in it. Well, I had permission to hunt a property right next to this sanctuary, and there was a finger of woods that came out into this cornfield where I had permission to hunt. And I was basically hunting on the last tree on this little wooded point. And that afternoon, it was probably 30 minutes before dark, a group of about a half a dozen does and fawns fed out from that sanctuary cover into the cornfield. They followed that little tree point where I was sitting, and just a couple minutes behind him, this buck come. He's an 8-point buck, scored 140 inches. He follows them does out right past my stand. I put an arrow in him, and the whole group of deer ran out across the field away from this sanctuary area, and they all ran into another little patch of cover across the other side of the field. And I knew I hit the deer just a little bit back, probably in the liver area. And I didn't want to take any chances whatsoever, so I just let it go. I sit in my stand until dark. I didn't want those deer to see me climbing down or anything. I climbed down. I came back the next day with a couple of friends. We went into that little patch of brush where I seen the deer run, and within 5 minutes, we found him laying there. Had hit him through the liver just like I suspected. He looked like he had just laid down in his bed and laid his chin on the ground, and that's how he died. But that's the story from 1986, and I'm going to send Terry a good photo to share on the YouTube page, and also probably the cover for or the thumbnail for this video.
So it's a great story, but looking back on it right now and your history of your hunting career, what was the one takeaway that it's just like it kind of was another little tool in the toolbox from this buck?
Well, I was at that point, I was a long way from knowing what I know now, but there was a couple things that really I was picking up on at that time. One was you got to figure out where these deer are bedding, where they're spending their daylight hours, and I figured those deer were in that sanctuary. There was more than one good buck staying in that sanctuary. It was a fairly large acreage.
Right.
So that's one thing I was doing right. And then, hunting that, it was late in the rut. And Steve and I just filmed a video on this the other day, but, late in the rut, those bucks are really searching for does because they've got more downtime between hot does. It just takes longer to find each one because there's fewer of them. And I knew these deer were coming out and feeding in this cornfield, and that if there was a group of does that came out, more than likely there was going to be a buck come along as well. So just a couple of takeaways is, one, you got to hunt those deer where they spend their daylight hours, and you got to realize what stage of the season you're in. That happened to be the tail end of the rut, so plan your strategy accordingly.
Their percentages, we've talked about it before, your percentages of killing a target buck when you're not on the farm where he's bedded is drastically reduced. So great insight, great buck, and hope people enjoy these segments that we're going to keep bringing to you through the summer. So with that, don't forget to buy your tickets to Lester's Feet this week. I'm I've got a big surprise for everybody on how much money we're going to raise. So this has been a true blessing to a lot of families, and also very rewarding for Don and myself as we've seen all this come together. So Don, take us out with the thanks to our sponsors.
Yeah, thank everybody for tuning in. God bless. See you next week.
Have a good week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Buy Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.